Okay, so a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a review of what I watched in November. And while I'm sure I could go on about each of these individually and make a video for each of them, I'm just going to try and give general thoughts, overviews, opinions of the movies and TV shows that I watched in November. Okay, so I started out the month with Priscilla, and I think this was a really good movie to kickstart this month for me. I thought it had a really distinct and beautiful style that really is different from a lot of other styles. The aesthetic of it reminds me a little bit of Danish pastel, where it has a lot of traditionally feminine visual images at the same time that are kind of understated and muted a bit, a little bit distant, not entirely maximalist, if that makes sense. And I think that did a good job with the thesis statement kind of the movie, talking about how this life that Priscilla lived was super glamorous on the outside, but with a closer look, fell a little bit flat, was a little bit dull, and was not that fulfilling. The hair and makeup and costumes, as well as production design and cinematography, all combined to really successfully execute the style, and Sofia Coppola did a great job of executing a signature as well. I think Kaylee Spaney did a really great job of a lot of different things. I think one is the passage of time. She was really able to portray both a very young version of Priscilla and a much older, wiser version of Priscilla. She can play, 13, 14, as well as late 20s mother very well, and both are equally as believable. I think her performance was really masterful in its subtlety. I think there was a lot going on in her psychology that was shown to you but not explicitly stated, and her performance did a lot to convey that successfully. Jacob Elordi was also pretty pitch perfect. I think he knew exactly what his role was in this movie, exactly how to play it, and I think he did a good job of evoking and emulating Elvis without it being a spot-on impression or a super in-depth character actor, method actor type of thing. He wasn't the point of the movie. He was essential to be in the movie and almost to be represented as like a figurehead of the movie, as he was to Priscilla, so much of a symbol of an idol to look up to. So he conveyed and encompassed all the things that Elvis needed to be for the purposes of the movie, but didn't take away any attention. I'd need to watch it again to get more of a concrete opinion on kind of the message of the movie or what exactly it's trying to portray or convey. To me, it feels a little bit like a subtle exploration of entering into a relationship like that. How these patterns of toxicity in relationships can really sneak up on you and creep up on you. I think you understand why she feels the way that she feels. I think you understand her perspective really well. That's what the movie's about. It's really about her perspective. It's not necessarily, I don't think, so concerned with maligning Elvis as it is with presenting an alternative to the story that we've all been told and all seen, where it just fleshes it out a little bit more. I think it can work as a companion piece to other things that have been about Elvis and or Priscilla in the past. But I don't think a lot of people have really taken the time to think about what that must have been like for her, and this movie is doing that and only that above all else. Again, I would need to watch it again to get more of a verdict on my opinion of the themes being explored, but I think it did a good job tonally to be somewhat ambiguous, somewhat subtle, but also still conveying the points that it wanted to convey. So the next thing that I watched was Prisoners, and this I had never seen before, but it did a really good job of immersing me into the tone and the genre of it, so much so that I even was really craving the feeling that I got from this movie, and I went on to watch more movies of this genre of kind of a detective story, a missing person, murder, mystery, and to be honest, none of them quite replicated the satisfaction that I got from watching this movie, and just how kind of pitch perfect and spot on it was in itching that particular scratch for this type of movie and this genre. The performances are certainly the main thing in this that makes it work as well as it does. I think Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Paul Dano in particular all do a really good job of playing the characters that they're given and establishing the world. The narrative momentum of this movie was really good. It never felt like it dragged. It never felt like it lost momentum. The setup and the suspense were all done really well and paid off accordingly. The twist toward the end seemed a little out of place or a little try-hard, for lack of a better word. It just felt like they were trying to do something, and it didn't feel like it was as effective or as natural as maybe one would hope a twist in a movie like this would be, but it didn't ruin the movie for me, though it did stick out to me as kind of being lackluster. But all of the characters were really interesting. I think it did a really good job of setting up multiple paths to go down and then converging all three of them. There's kind of three main storylines or three main courses of investigation that are explored throughout the movie, and then they all end up converging. So I think screenwriting wise, that was a really great structural way to set it all up and then to tie it all together in the end. And again, kept the suspense and the momentum moving. But there's also a lot of just really interesting characters in this, and a lot of their different perspectives and psychologies are kind of explored and gone into. And yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. The next movie that I watched, which this was my third time watching it, was the Aish Tour movie. And I really don't have much to say other than period. I think it was great. There's so many things that just give me particular dopamine, like certain moments in that I think I'll probably make a compilation of like, you know, she walks on this beat at this moment, or the backup dancer gives this look at this moment that were so satisfying and so perfect. But I thought it was really amazing, as always. And I'm sure there will be more to come on that. The next movie that I watched was Seven. I had never seen this before either, but again, going along with the genre of detective, murder movie, that type of thing. Actually, the character, the way that it was written in particular, was extremely interesting, extremely fascinating. I was a little surprised that I hadn't actually heard of this character before, because to me, it gave off a vibe of being extremely iconic right off the bat. That character's psyche was really, really fascinating. I just kind of placed him, in my mind, in the same caliber and category as like a Hannibal Lecter. It's just the structural setup of the murders and the motives behind the murder and the method of communication and kind of a Riddler-esque type of quality, playing with the detectives one step ahead of them. That dynamic was always really, really interesting and intriguing. I love seeing that dynamic in anything. There was just a lot behind it, which I think often movies with killers, murders, serial killers don't really delve into that. And it's not always necessary, but I think it does add an extra element of depth and nuance to the story, as well as intrigue. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman's chemistry was actually really good, which surprised me. Again, never seen it. I have never seen them in a movie together before, so I thought that their dynamic was charming, and Gwyneth Paltrow played along in that. And yeah, I found it endearing. I thought it was a charming, odd couple of detectives. Visually, the movie matched it tonally. You know, it was dark and gritty. Overall, I did think it was interesting, though I do have to say that, again, the intrigue with me lied a lot more with the villain than it did with the heroes, which I'm not sure if that was entirely the point or entirely intentional, but for me, that's what ended up happening. The next thing I watched was Killing of a Sacred Deer, and this was bizarre. I expected nothing less of Yorgos Lanthimos. Okay, I was going into it expecting bizarre. I am familiar with some of his work, so I was not surprised by this at all. The story was a bit surprising to me. I really didn't know anything about the story. I had just heard the title mentioned before, but nothing about the story in particular. Barry Keoghan he's a little freak. He's so good at being a little freak. And I'm not going to review this now, but I just watched Saltburn yesterday in December for my December watch list, and like, he's so good at being weird. He's just so good at being a little freak, a little weirdo. And hats off to him. He's a really versatile actor. He can do much more than just being a freak and a weirdo, but the way that he does it is very convincing and feels very real and grounded in reality, which I think makes it even scarier every time. Everyone's performance in this really shone to me. I think Nicole Kidman and Colin Farrell, along with the younger actors who played their kids, all had a really, really good grasp on what the particular tone was that they were going for and the balance that they were striking, and it's not easy to do. I think they had a very specific vision for what they wanted this to be tonally, and it's not an easy thing to nail as an actor, but I do think that all the performances were really walking that tightrope really well and did it really effectively. The world that was established was so funny because it was like both in the realm of reality and absolutely far out the realm of reality. It seemed like an alternate reality, like a sci-fi type of thing, alternate world, but at the same time also very, very realistic in certain parts, which again, I think is like a trademark or a signature of Yorgos Lanthimos. I think that's just kind of every world that he creates is like that. It did feel like it fell a little flat, especially toward the end. But again, the premise is just interesting. It's intriguing. It gets you on board. It's like, what is happening right now? It was unique and interesting to watch, that's for sure. It had a very distinct visual style as well. The look of it was very particular and, again, matched this tone really well. It's not my favorite thing I've ever seen, but I respect it a lot. The next thing I watched was Nightcrawler. Jake Gyllenhaal is awesome. I've always known this, but I kind of am never done being surprised by it or being reminded of it. He's really an amazing actor. His portrayal of this character is really scary. Like, he genuinely was frightening in this. It was a really interesting character study. Everything was from the main character's perspective, which I think desensitizes the audience because it's putting you in his shoes and showing you things from his perspective. So it's logically like making sense as you're going along because you're seeing it his way. And it's only in certain moments that you're being jarred and taken out of it because you're like, oh wait, that's actually psychotic. You know what I mean? Like, which is really kind of impressive because objectively, I think a lot of the stuff that happens in this is crazy, but it did a good job of really kind of like consuming you in the world and getting you to see his perspective, only to, in various moments, take you out of it and be like, oh wow, this is crazier than I have been thinking it was, or have been feeling like it was. It's all made to feel very normal, very gradual, very progressive. The cinematography did a really good job of conveying the vibe that it was going for, the kind of Nightcrawler-ish, stalker-ish, predatory vibe. I think there's probably a lot that could be said for the story thematically and the messages that it's getting across and the things that it's saying. And there's like an underlying level of ickiness to it the whole time. It's not overt, it's subtle, but it's there. It's foreboding. I also really liked the ending. That was something in particular that I felt was satisfying. I felt did a good job, and I think really tied the movie up really well. The next thing I watched was Anatomy of a Fall, and I watched this in theaters and then watched it again, back to back. Like, I literally watched it, finished it, and then went straight back and watched it again, and it's probably the best movie of this year. I am obsessed with it. I love it. I think it's amazing. I am most definitely going to do a in-depth analysis of it because I just think there's so much to unpack, so much to mine. It's so complex, so nuanced, so interesting, so enthralling, and everything about it is great. I think the writing is amazing, the story is amazing, the performances were awesome. There's just nothing not to like about this. It really is thought-provoking and brings up a lot of questions about the world, about relationships, about psychology, which is kind of the ultimate goal for a lot of movies, and not many do it that successfully. This one had me just thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking nonstop. I was on a spiral. I couldn't stop thinking about this movie. There were so many new things to uncover and unpack, and new concepts that were coming to mind. I was so inspired by this. I think it's revelatory. The next thing that I watched was Nocturnal Creatures, and I don't know what I was expecting of this. I've definitely heard about this a lot. I think knowing that Amy Adams and Jake Gyllenhaal were in it gave me some reasonable expectation that it would be good, but to be honest, it did not click for me. I did not like this pretty much at all. And I don't really understand why people do like this, to be completely honest. I think the premise itself is interesting, kind of doing a story within a story and a fictional version within the story to tell the story, but it still fell very flat to me. It felt very surface level. It felt like there wasn't much there, and it didn't feel like much of a story at all. There wasn't like narrative momentum. We didn't really get to know the characters. It was just kind of very surface. Amy Adams and Jake Gyllenhaal are both some of the like greatest actors working today, so again, I'm a little confused. Like, they did what they did. You know what I mean? Like, they did their best. But the script itself, I just don't think the story was saying or doing anything. It didn't really go anywhere. It just fell very flat to me. And also, the shots at the beginning felt very strange, exploitative, and unnecessary, as did much of this movie, in my opinion. I'm sorry. The next thing that I watched was Nice Guys, and I've heard a lot about this, of course. I love Ryan Gosling. I think he's one of the greatest actors of any generation. I genuinely, I think he is the best, and he did not disappoint in this. Really good chemistry between him and Russell Crowe, which was unexpected to me. Both of them are really good actors individually, so I don't know why it was surprising to me, but I don't think I had ever really considered what their vibe might be or what they might be able to pull off in a comedy like this. It was more fun than funny to me. I think it was more entertaining than it was actually laugh out loud inducing, but it was a fun ride. Also, Angourie Rice, she was really great as a supporting character. She really kind of stuck out to me. I thought that was a really great performance on her part. Not mind-blowing, but it was fun. The next thing I watched was La La Land, and I've known this, but just cemented it. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think this is one of the greatest movies of all time. I will die on that hill. I think literally everything about it is just tip-top shape. There is nothing... The acting is at the highest caliber. The directing is at the highest caliber. The writing is at the highest caliber. The cinematography and production design is at the highest caliber. No one is doing it like that. Like, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, both individually as actors, are some of the best actors working. Their chemistry together is unmatched. The story was moving, it was funny, it was entertaining, it was relatable, it evoked any and every emotion that any story should or would. The color palette alone, visually, this movie is so stunning. And I know it's gotten its praises for that, but I think people forget just how stunning and what a technically impressive feat this movie is to pull off. I cannot believe that they pulled off the things that they did. The cinematography, the numbers, the choreography. Again, Damien Chazelle and me are just like so on the same page. I am very much a color person, and he is very much a color person. If you didn't notice that before, go watch it again and notice, but it's very intentional. It's very colorful. It's very lively. It was heartbreaking, moving, touching, engaging. It was everything. And I'm sure I'll do more reviews of this and analysis into this later, but I just really is, however many times I've watched it, it's just, again, watching it again, I'm just like, wow, there are just not many movies that are just up on this caliber. There just aren't. The next thing I watched was Theater Camp, and honestly, this really should have worked for me because I love everyone in the cast, and I have experience as a theater kid and in musical theater and in camps and things like this, so it really should be my cup of tea, but honestly, it fell a little flat to me. It had some funny and relatable moments, but I don't think it had enough for it to, like, warrant the runtime, and it felt like a little bit of a mishmash stylistically to me. I think even though it had a distinct style and a distinct method of communicating the story, it still felt very jumbled and a little messy and a little unsure of what it wanted to be, to me. Next thing I watched was Whiplash, another masterpiece, Damien Chazelle, period. Powerhouse performances. The story is so simplistic, yet told in such a thrilling way. I mean, I really don't know. A story about a freaking drummer is like literally more enthralling than most thrillers, dramas, action, crime movies ever. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I think that's a very common reaction to this movie. It is so crazy how such a simple premise was made to be such a thrilling thing to watch. Again, the directing from Damien Chazelle, masterful. The next thing I watched was The Master, and honestly, this is the type of movie that I really should like. And it's not that I disliked it. I think part of it might be because I watched it in 2 parts. I didn't finish it all in one sitting, which might have really kind of disrupted the experience. I'm sure if I watched it again, I would find a lot more there. But I was interested by the particular angle of the focus on the relationship of the 2 main characters rather than anything else. I think that was prioritized above all else, which I really do think is an interesting and unique angle to take, and really benefited the story and the characters, as well as allowed Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, 2 of the greatest actors, to really have great performances. I think it could have benefited from a little bit more exploration or explanation about things, as well as maybe a perspective shift. And that could also be my fault because I had prior knowledge of it going into it. I went into this movie being like, oh, I know what this movie's about. I know what type of movie this is. And had I not gone into it knowing that, maybe I would have a different experience. But I do feel like there could have been more subtlety in certain areas, or if they were trying to evoke a particular psychological experience, they could have mirrored that more with the main character rather than showing more perspectives, if that makes sense. The next thing I watched was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It was good. It was fun. I missed this world. I want more. It fell flat a little bit after the first part. I think the part with the Hunger Games was the most interesting part of it, and it did feel like, kind of multiple movies in one, as I'm sure the book did, because it is really kind of 3 distinct timelines and 3 distinct stories being made into one. And Tom Blythe is great. Love him, and he's really sexy. So, can't go wrong. The next thing I watched was The Creator, and I only watched this because my brother-in-law wanted to watch it for his birthday. One of the only genres that I really don't gravitate towards, and just almost always end up disliking movies that I see from it, is sci-fi. It just does not click with me. It does not resonate for me. It has to be like really a transcendent type of thing for me to see it, and really transcendent for me to enjoy it. It has to really transcend that genre. Creator, like, to be honest, I wasn't really paying that much attention. Yeah, just weird. Didn't seem that good. Didn't seem that good, but I don't like it. It's not for me in the first place, so who knows? Maybe if sci-fi is your type of thing, that'll be your favorite movie ever. The next thing I watched was season 5 and season 6 part 1 of The Crown. The Crown is so fucking good, people. And I cannot believe that I forget how good The Crown is every single time. I've watched every single season since the beginning, and every time I'm watching The Crown, I'm enthralled, I'm gagged, I'm gooped. I cannot believe the mastery of what I'm watching in front of me. And then I forget somehow. I forget how good it is until I jump right back into it, and I'm like, oh my god, everything about this is just so top tier. The budget alone allows for the production design and the cinematography to just be head and shoulders above so many other things in movies, let alone TV. All the performances are good. The casting department ate that every single time. It should not work as well as it does, and yet it has. My suspension of disbelief has somehow been conquered. I am able to follow these characters and these storylines and these through lines, despite the fact that they have been played by, 3 different actors over the course of the show. It's making me interested in what seem like they should be mundane, uninteresting, boring stories of, like, the crown, of the royals, of the British. Like, I am on the edge of my seat. The storytelling is so fantastic. The production design, the costumes, the hair, everything is just so top-notch, so period. She is that girl. The Crown is so fucking good, and I cannot believe that I forget that every single time, because it's so unbelievably good. I rounded out the month with Barbie, and I have conflicting thoughts on this. This was my second time watching it all the way through. I do have a lot of love for it, but there's also still a lot that I don't love about it. There's a lot that I'm skeptical of, or a little bit hesitant about, or really don't know what to think about. I'm happy that it exists, and that's the bottom line. I am happy that this movie exists. I'm happy that it's had the success that it has. I'm happy that it's entered the cultural zeitgeist the way that it has. The production design is stellar. There's almost nothing like it. It is unbelievable. The world that was built visually, it is so stunning. It is so unbelievable. It is so visionary and genius. It cannot be overstated enough. I adore Greta Gerwig. Lady Bird is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Little Women as well. And I like this movie. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that I appreciated about it. There's a lot of things that I think are really great about it, but there's also a lot that I don't love about it. There's also a lot that I'm not sure how I feel about it with. It's entertaining and fun, and the performances are good. The cast is great. Ryan Gosling is, of course, hilarious, as he is in everything. Margot Robbie's fantastic, as she is in everything. But in appealing to mass audiences, I think it fell somewhere in between of, like, doing what it wanted to do. It just kind of is never going to win, though. It's, like, going to be too controversial for some people and not controversial enough for other people. It's going to be too obvious for some people and not obvious enough for other people. I think it really strikes that balance in the demographic of, like, a lot of people can easily fall on either side of it. But regardless, I'm happy that this exists. I'm happy that it's been successful. I'm happy that Greta Gerwig is working. I can't wait to see what she does next. And I am happy with the cultural conversation that this movie has started. It has been very interesting and entertaining to watch. So that's it for my November watch list. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you did. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you for another video very shortly. Bye!